In this update, we've got big storms on the way with damaging winds and large hail producers as the heat really starts to build, especially along the west coast. But a cool down is on the way with the monsoonal flow continuing as we'll walk you through the rest of the month. Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here with another update. Happy Friday. Hope everyone had a fabulous week out there. Let's take a look at the overall water vapor imagery this morning, and we've got our system out here into the open waters up the Pacific. This is Celia. That is just bringing a relentless stream of moisture into the desert Southwest. In fact, we've got some heavier rains breaking out just north of Phoenix this morning, but there's actually a pretty strong cold front for June standards making its way across the U.S., but out ahead of it, we've got a lot of heat to contend with all this sinking air. A lot of record temperatures or near record temperatures are going to be unfolding today. And as the heat will really start to build, this will be tapping into this energy. And we'll be looking at some very significant thunderstorms going to be breaking out up here across the upper Midwest and the Great Plains here as we get deeper into the afternoon hours, into the evening time frame, because this looks to be a fairly significant event. But out ahead of it, like I mentioned, we've got plenty of heat to contend with numerous heat advisories down here. I mean, this just area has been relentless with that sinking high pressure system. Some of these areas, even into Florida yesterday, got into 100 degrees. But yeah, along the coast, that's dangerous stuff, guys. I mean, the heat index will get 105, 108, 110 later on this afternoon. But this is a big change out here in the Pacific Northwest. They've had much cooler conditions for much of the season so far. That is changing rapidly as a very intense high pressure will be making its way. In fact, they've got heat advisories for them. They won't take effect until tomorrow, but they're expecting temperatures well into the 90s with heat indexes upwards to over 100 degrees up there in the Pacific Northwest. But today, they're still hanging on with the upper 70s, if not low 80s up there. It's still higher than what they typically have been of late, but you can definitely see the heat really starting to build across much of California, the desert Southwest. But really what sticks out a sore thumb is right along the south and the southeast, getting into Texas. 104 for Dallas today. That would be their highest temperature so far this season. Some 105s kind of popping up. But yeah, the 90s are lifting all the way to the Dakotas, but you can actually see where the cold front will be right along this boundary. So back behind that cold front, we've got some pretty significant temperature drop of 15 to 20 degrees, but out ahead of it, we got plenty of the heat to contend with, and that's going to bring the fuel for the thunderstorms today up across the upper Midwest into this region up here where they do have an enhanced risk for severe storms, and a good chunk of the Dakotas into Minnesota this afternoon, South Dakota, that fishtails all the way down into Nebraska, where they could be looking at some supercell thunderstorms really starting to break out. This activity could be looking at some hurricane force wind gusts of 75 miles an hour or greater is definitely not out of the question with these supercells. Very large hail producers of that 2-inch diameter or greater. Atmosphere has the potential to about 3 inches this afternoon. Cloud tops upwards to approaching 60,000 feet. So this can be some dangerous stuff later on this afternoon into the early evening hours. And this actually extends all the way into Canada. And this actually has a tornado threat as well. So definitely be on high alert because all three modes are on the table up here. But we do have that little coastal low that we've been talking about heading out towards Florida. That's going to bring a cool down for them and bringing those scattered heavier rain showers as we extend throughout the afternoon. But let's take a look at the overall setup as we get into about 6 o'clock this evening. So this is what the radar could potentially look like. We have scattered activity coming out of portions of Nebraska here just north of North Platte. Things are going to be starting to get its act together along just in Nebraska, heading through Pierre into Aberdeen, into Minot. These supercell thunderstorms could be some large hail producers really starting to break out, taking advantage of all that heat building for the afternoon hours. And once that cold front gets a little bit closer and it taps in all that instability, there's a lot of lift with these thunderstorms, and we could be looking at supercell thunderstorms breaking out into Grand Forks area. I think this does extend all the way up into Canada. But as we continue to time frame about 10 o'clock, so things are going to be really bumpy towards dinner time, towards the late evening time frame, getting into towards the midnight time frame. Here's what it could potentially look like around 10 o'clock. So we could be looking at a fairly significant squall line kind of breaking out into North Platte, getting into Pierre, back into Aberdeen, into Jamestown. Fargo, be looking at some really intense storms down into Grand Forks, into Winnipeg. This bow segment, there's signs of bow segments really could be bowing out. That's when I think the wind gusts could be upwards to 75 miles an hour. I'm expecting probably severe thunderstorm watches or even tornado watches up here with winds upwards to 80. Even almost 90 miles an hour is definitely not out of the question out here. So yeah, high alert today from about 6 o'clock to about midnight time frame. Those 6 hours up here could really start being pretty nasty. So have all your weather radios handy and take heed for all those warnings and get in your safe place and get out of harm's way, because these storms definitely do look to be packing a punch later on this afternoon. But going through tomorrow, as we transfer into your Saturday time frame, you can almost see where the cold front will be, right? There's going to be showers and thunderstorms breaking out along that cold front. So hey, they're all called cold fronts, right? Even this time of year, cold front is like loosely, but there's no such thing as actually a cool front technically. They're all called cold fronts. But yeah, any drop in temperature with these heats, these triple digit heats further south is a welcome relief, because it's been relentless for those folks down in the southern plains. But yeah, taking advantage of that cold front, could be looking at some shower and storms breaking out of the Texas Panhandle, going into Oklahoma, getting some rain showers for them, Kansas, into Missouri, back into portions of Illinois. Those could be just kind of on the marginal risk side as we get into late evening, going into the overnight time frame. I kind of stopped the clock here about late Saturday night, going into your midnight time frame on Sunday, where that cold front could be right along the Texas Panhandle, getting into New Mexico and the all those areas. Really been kind of relentless. I mean, once the monsoonal flow has started, it's just been a steady stream of moisture, just almost inundating New Mexico sporadically on a daily basis. Now we actually have that cold front combining. This is all compliments of these series of storms that be coming out of the Pacific that's just been sending relentless moisture, which is actually good. I mean, this area has just been desperately needing rainfall, and even California actually got in the action a couple of days ago with much needed rain for them. So yeah, along that boundary, that's where the cold front could be as we get into your late Saturday night time frame, into your early Sunday time frame. But here's the winds. So here's the winds for the next 48 hours. And like I mentioned, these can be fairly significant. I mean, coming out of the Dakotas, coming out of Nebraska, I mean, this model's maxing out about 93 miles an hour. And this is actually pretty good. It's pretty accurate this close in. So definitely not out of the question. That's an isolated event, but yeah, 60, 70, upwards to 80 miles an hour. And I'm probably going to be seeing some reports of upwards to over 90 miles an hour along the Dakotas, portions of Nebraska. That gets into Minnesota, and even stronger wind gusts will extend out into Wisconsin here, into the later evening time frame, into the overnight hours. But we do have our little surface low down here towards Florida, and along the coastal regions, those storms could be fairly significant with these little bubblers too. So they could be looking at some stronger wind gusts, especially along the coast into the Florida Panhandle, down here to places like Mobile as we get over the next 48 hours. But here's kind of an overall setup. This isn't precipitation. This is maybe intensity of potential rainfall over the next 48 hours. And how you would actually read this is all these areas in green, that's more or less your lighter rain. So we've got that sporadic lighter rain showers going to be breaking out off the monsoonal flow, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, getting into Colorado, where the coastal low could be, where these storms could be a little bit more significant. The darker reds just kind of indicate where the potential a little bit heavier rainfall when those thunderstorms are going to be over your area. So for much of Florida has the possibility of that heavier rainfall over the next 48 hours. And obviously where that system is going to be in play today with the Dakotas into Minnesota, that gets down into Nebraska, into Iowa, going into Wisconsin. those actually could be a little bit heavier rain showers. In these darker purples here, that is your more significant rain shower. So this kind of gives you an idea of where the rainfall could be over the next 48 hours across the U.S. But yeah, there's plenty of heat even by Sunday. I mean, that cold front, obviously these times of years, they slow down as they keep going further south. But this actually does make it into parts of Texas. But you can actually see where the cold front will be on Sunday. I don't need to tell you, 63 degrees in Colorado, but look at the standout, guys. I mean, that's a significant change with 104 along the coast, 94, 98 degrees. That's why they do have those heat advisories in place. That's a good 20 to 30 degree jump in temperatures of what you've been seeing as of late. So your body has not been acclimated to that heat, because you just have not experienced that. And you know, this is a little bit rare. I know last year you had really record temperatures up there, but yeah, anytime you get into the 90s up there and even upwards to 100 degrees, that's fairly significant. But it does appear that it doesn't last. It's a very subtle event. You're going to have a couple of days into the 90s there, and I think it really starts to come down. But there's 102 on Sunday in much of Dallas, back into the 80s in Oklahoma. That's a big change for them, and even widespread 70s. So back behind that cold front, that's going to be really nice conditions coming up for your Sunday across the midsection of the country with widespread 70s. So it's going to be crystal clear skies. It's going to be really beautiful out there. So definitely there's that reward at the end of the tunnel after you kind of get through those bumpy storms tonight. You've got a significant nicer weather on the way. But there's the cold front coming in on Monday, right? So I think it goes through Dallas sometime into the overnight hours on Sunday. Then once it gets into Monday, it goes into central Texas, and it more or less stalls out over central Texas. It kind of loses its speed. But it's actually going to be bringing some much needed rain showers down here into central Texas, down into Louisiana, and this is draped across right along the southeast there. So Mississippi, Alabama, into Georgia, into the Tennessee Valley, along the coast. This is basically where the cold front will be, and it will be producing those scattered showers all along the eastern seaboard as we get into your Monday time frame. But taking a look at the overall satellite picture as we get into your, Tuesday going into Wednesday, that cold front will just continue just to kind of meander along the coastal regions. It really doesn't go anywhere. The monsoonal flow continues. You're going to have sporadic showers for the desert Southwest. Pretty clear skies on the backside of this cold front. But this cold front really just kind of sits and stalls technically for maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, really into Thursday. Really for 3 days, it just kind of sits there and produces scattered showers, really more or less along the coastal regions. They will bleed into portions of central Texas, portions a little bit further off into the north, but it's along really these coastal regions that are, I think, going to get the better chances for those heavier rainfall. But yeah, as we get into Wednesday, there's no more 90s along the Pacific Northwest. So like I mentioned, it's pretty subtle. It's only lasting for a couple of days, and then you're back into the 70s. But there's the heat. Doesn't take long. Once that cold front kind of loses its luster, it backs up. We're not looking at triple digits, but it's still, you're back into the mid 90s, upper 90s for a good chunk of Texas, back into the 90s in Oklahoma, Kansas, as the ridge will start to build back again as that cold front will be losing its luster. But down here, up here into the northeast, yeah, pretty nice, comfortable conditions. Low 80s is not bad up there. So, but let's take a look at the overall drought, because this has been an ongoing problem with this, obviously, the La Nina that just won't give up. So, yeah, all these areas that are under that La Nina threshold obviously has, really desperately needing rain. So much of California, when they got it the other day, they desperately need it. They're all experiencing moderate, if not almost exceptional drought, and a good chunk where they have been getting a lot of rains up in the Pacific Northwest. Obviously not much drought to contend with. They do need some rains, especially in northern portions of Montana, where they do have pockets of severe and exceptional drought. But along the coast, these monsoonal rains are just now kind of beginning in a good chunk of the desert Southwest. So this will be eating away over time with the drought conditions, where they're still experiencing an exceptional drought in much of New Mexico and much of Texas too. So yeah, with that stalled front along the coast here into South Texas and to Louisiana with those rain showers, that is much needed because those areas actually are under a severe drought. And even along the coast here, along the East Coast, there's even pockets of drought, moderate drought, getting along into the Carolinas as well. So there's definitely areas that definitely need the rain. And this is giving you an idea of where the soil moisture is right now across the US, and you can definitely see where some of the recent rains have been, and all these areas of green really kind of depict that. In much of the Pacific Northwest, there's the monsoonal flow getting pockets of Arizona into New Mexico. Like I mentioned, they got a long ways to make a dent in the drought, but it's a good sign to see with the soil moistures at least trying to moisten up down here. But a good chunk of Texas, if not all of Texas, some of these areas had actually seen any drop of precipitation in over 3 weeks now. So the ground is really drying out in a good chunk of Texas, and really there's pockets of drier conditions across much of the east as well. So it's really been out here where they're experiencing those cooler conditions and all the monsoonal flow where they've had seen some of the heavier rains as of late. But going forward, here's between now and the end of the month, to give you an idea where the rains will be. I think it definitely dries out as we heat up out here across the west. It's going to dry out as well. So I'm not really expecting, if not much of anything out here. But the monsoonal flow will continue for a good chunk of the deserts, especially into New Mexico, where they've been getting those heavier rainfalls. That extends now into southern Colorado as well, where you can see where the high pressure is. There's not much to speak of on the backside because you got a lot of dry air back behind on the other side of that cold front. But along the coast here, where it really will stall over I think Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we could be looking at some healthier rains, especially along the coast. And there are some signs where a low pressure center tries to actually form. Well, that will just kind of amplify and help with these rain showers as well. If there's any signs of this, any low pressure, I mean, these areas, these sea surface temperatures out here, especially along the coast, are plenty warm, especially with all the record heat they have been seeing lately. But there's that pocket of across the upper Midwest of those heavier rains across the Dakotas into Minnesota, into Iowa, across Wisconsin as well, and then just sporadic showers going to be taking a bit over the next week across much of the Ohio Valley and to the Northeast. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. I am going to be doing a tropical update this afternoon, so definitely stay tuned for that, and catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after storm.